What's involved in awakening? Good question, I'm glad you asked. So obviously, physical world reality, we're living in a physical world. We're living in a physical world. We have purpose here. But if you go inside, the first thing you find is that there's this thing called the mind. And there are a lot of practices out there these days, mindfulness of that and mindfulness of this and all of that kind of, it's all valuable. It's all valuable. What we think about things, what our beliefs are about things, very, very, very important. As you go deeper inside, we come into this awareness of another level called the emotions. We have feelings about things. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative. Well, we're still in that polarity. These two together, the mental and emotional, are what psychologists are talking about when they talk about the ego. So your ego is precisely your mind, what you think about, and the feelings that you have regarding what you think about. See, if you just thought about things, you wouldn't be able to do anything. Unless you have mind over matter, that's not going to take you very far. We need to have gas in your tank. So we have emotions, energy and motion, emotions, to give us energy in order to do things in physical world reality. There's another level, the unconscious. From our experience here at USM, we don't go delving into the unconscious, because what we have found over the years is what's in there is in there for a darn good reason. And you don't want to go messing around in there. At least you uncover something that the person wasn't really ready to see, and then they can have some really big problems. What we have found is that if we just work in the areas of the mental and the emotional, when something is cleared in consciousness, the next thing that is in the unconscious will naturally bubble up into awareness so that we can heal it. It's like there seems to be a knowing of when you're ready to handle the next big thing. We don't have to worry about that. Now, these levels all have that polarity that we talk about that is part of physical world reality. There's a positive and there's a negative. So, for example, people who think that they have a great job are going to feel good going to work in the morning. And people who think that they have a crummy job are not going to feel so good about going to work in the morning. So this is basically where psychology has gotten to. In our work with people, we found, lo and behold, there's another level that we call the authentic self. People started accessing the authentic self. I've been reading a book recently that was written, I think about 30 years ago, by a man from India. And I started to realize that spiritual psychology, in many ways, is much closer to some of the Indian traditional psychologies than what we have in the Western world. I thought that was fascinating. So we began to notice people were having these experiences that in the Indian tradition would be called samadhi states. We call it unconditional love. Unconditional love. Notice there's no polarity. There's no positive and negative. There's no right and wrong. There's no good and bad. There's none of that. There's just unconditional love. People who went deeper and deeper and deeper into this found that they awakened more and more and more into the awareness of what we could call spirit or God or whatever word you would want to call it. To us, God and love really are the same thing. Einstein said that in that letter. He made that statement. We would just say that so that we don't quibble over definitions. If you just go for love, you can't really go wrong. You're going in the right direction. Right meaning awakening. There are derivatives of unconditional love. There are other experiences that we have, such as little things. Peace, acceptance, compassion, beauty, joy, freedom, gratitude, humor, one of my absolute favorites. I have found people who tend to be spiritual tend to be funny. Call me crazy. I think the reason is because they see that you don't have to take things so seriously, that there can be a lot more fun to the whole process, which is why we have fun while we're doing this. This is the structure that we're operating in. How do the barriers fit in here? Where are the barriers? Well, let's say that you want to do something, and this would be your comfort zone. This is where you hang out. Wherever this is where you hang out. So if you start to do anything that would pull you out of your comfort zone, let's say that you want to write a book, or can go the other way too. Let's say that a situation is occurring in your life and you have to marshal resources to deal with it. So we like to use the book example because it's easy to see. So we had a student who was writing a book one time, and so let's say in the first month what she did was she wrote 30 pages. So she moved out of her comfort zone by 30 pages worth of energy. How do we know that? She'd never written anything before. Her attitude was, who am I to write a book? Who would want to read it? Who would care? She writes 30 pages. What she has accomplished, she has converted 30 pages of what used to be negative energy into positive energy. All learning takes place this way. See, all learning takes place this way, especially experiential learning. But notice what's happened. She's now out of balance psychologically. Remember, we told you the levels all line up. So, a very interesting phenomenon will now occur. And anyone who has done any spiritual work will recognize this. All of the mental and emotional and any related unconscious material that was associated with why she never wrote the 30 pages in the first place is going to come bubbling up for her to deal with. Anyone who has ever attempted to break a habit or go on a diet or deal with an addiction knows exactly what I'm talking about. What do most people know about how to deal with this stuff when it comes up? Not very much. And so what tends to happen is the writing stops and it just goes back to the original comfort zone. But let's say you persevere and you continue going, as this particular student did. She worked with the material that came forward in consciousness, the barriers that Rumi was talking about, and healed them one by one as they came forward over time, so that her consciousness shifted out of the comfort zone into a new level of awareness, new awakening, a new comfort zone is established, and the process repeats. If you want to write a whole book, you go through this several times. What are the barriers? Well, it's where I had those X's. It's where I had the X's. How do you find the barriers inside yourself? The best way that we know and that we have found is to look at one of the dynamics that have to do with the way that most people live their lives. This is the way we were brought up. Something happens out there and it's not right. It disturbs my peace. So just from what we've talked about so far, another way of saying that is it pulled me out of that state of unconditional awareness into one of those mental and emotional levels that has polarity in it. I'm upset because, and if you do this, where would you choose to fix whatever it is that is causing your disturbance? You would seek to fix out there whatever it was. No, it'd be an obvious, I'm upset because that's happening, so let me fix that out there, and then I won't be upset anymore. I'm still trying to find somebody for whom that worked. It doesn't seem to work that way. We took a survey one time in class, which was absolutely fascinating. We asked people if they would list their common upsets. And this is what we got. I'm upset because, number one, you don't listen to me. Whoever the you is in your life. You don't listen to me. In fact, one of the funniest things I ever remember is a woman standing up, and we were talking about this, and she said, "My boyfriend told me that I don't listen to him. That is so hard to hear." We said, "I rest my case." People don't understand me. There's a scripture that says everybody should understand me. And when people don't, they violate that scripture and they're bad and evil and wrong. Okay. Here's another one. Life is unfair. Life is supposed to be fair. Everybody knows that. It's supposed to be fair for everyone. We have to have equality everywhere. It's written someplace. Still haven't figured out where. I'm working too hard. This is a big one for a lot of people these days. I'm just working too hard. I've got too much to do. I can't possibly do all the things they want me to do. And that's upsetting to me. I get upset at myself. I'm upset because I don't behave like I should. And of course, for any of you who maybe live out of town and you want to find one that will always work, move here, and then you can do this one. I'm upset because traffic is terrible. I had to go the other day from Beverly Hills out to Los Feliz to visit a certain somebody. And I had to go through the city. Oh my God. I was doing this one. Couldn't help myself. Well, what's their alternative? Is there one? And if so, what is it? Because if you run, I am upset because, and that's your way of being in the world, I'm just going to come straight out and tell you, that is a complete and total victim position. My inner state is dependent upon things that I have no control over. How much more of a victim could you possibly be? Mm-hmm. What's the alternative? I can't even think of one. Well, how about this one? What if there was a way, what if there was a way that when you want to do this, instead you took a different route and you found a way to get in touch with the place inside where you were experiencing the upset. So I'm upset because I blame it out there. What if I forget the blame and I just got in touch with the place inside where that upset was present within me? And what if I could heal it? I could just make it dissolve. I can't say make it, really. I could just enter into a process, the result of which would be it would dissolve. Well, then what about the thing that would happen out there? What's still happening? You're just not upset about it. In fact, you're going to be in a place that's much more powerful to deal with it, because you'll be coming from clarity rather than from disturbance. Well, then what would be my inner state at that point in time? What you would do is you would awaken into this reality. And then you would go and deal with whatever it was that you had to deal with. That's what spiritual psychology here at USM is all about. I don't know how to say it in any simpler term, just to show you what it is that we're talking about here. How do you do it? What's involved? Good questions. The first thing you have to do is you have to start by being willing to take 100% personal responsibility for the upset that's going on inside of you every time you get upset. That disqualifies most people right there. You mean I have to give up my position of being right? Yes. I can't do that. Why not? Because it violates something that's very important to me. I see you have something that's so important inside of you that results in you being upset that you want to maintain. That makes a lot of sense. But yet that's the way many of us run our lives, is it not? Until we learn how to do it differently. We don't want to run our lives that way. We just never learned another way. So all becauses, I'm upset because, when we look at it from the spiritual context, all of those becauses, which means anything that disturbs your peace, that upsets you, are in reality triggers to unresolved issues seeking resolution, and they are part of what we call your spiritual curriculum. If you could learn how to look at your life like this, you would recognize that actually every time you got upset, you could consider that a blessing, because what you are demonstrating to yourself, you're getting feedback from your universe that is saying, hey, upset, opportunity for healing present. But that isn't taught in very many places. It is here. It is here. So you get the idea of what it is that we're talking about. That's the stuff that's in here that comes up. It's what I start to feel when I stop drinking. It's what I start to feel when I stop taking the drugs. It's what I start to feel when I stop feeding myself unhealthy food. It's all of that kind of stuff. Instead of looking at it as terrible experiences, look at it as feedback that you're being given an opportunity to heal something inside that is actually part of what we call your spiritual curriculum. It's why you're here. Remember, we said in the beginning, what's the purpose? Awakening. What's awakening? Letting go of these things. It's nothing more. Every time you let go of one thing, you grow in consciousness. You become more aware of your own inherent loving nature. Does the quality of your life improve accordingly? Of course it does. How can it not? How can it not? You show up on your job in a whole different way. The mental level, where do we work with in the mental level? Well, we work with limiting beliefs. The most challenging of which are judgments. So you could have a limiting belief, but it's when you enter into the right-wrongness of it. Like you could believe that turkey is healthier than chicken. No problem. But when you start getting into all the chicken farmers are bad and wrong and we should kill them all, then it starts to become a problem. So on the mental level, we work with limiting beliefs and judgments against self and others. The emotional level. We work with relieving emotional pain and suffering. It's a natural byproduct. It just vanishes automatically as we resolve these unresolved issues. The more a person is involved in unresolved issues, the more they're going to tend to have a deep-seated sense of unworthiness. Unworthiness, or I should say perceived unworthiness, is the biggest limiting issue on the entire planet. Why do we say perceived? Why can't I just be unworthy? Because how could you be an inherently loving being with unworthiness? The two things cannot go together in the same space. This is, more and more, Mary and I have been talking about this. Somehow we managed to stumble onto something that is literally world-changing in its potential, which is why we welcome the opportunity to break out from the academic circles